I'm Warren Elly, guest host on this edition of Speak Up Presents, a series covering local issues and concerns. This show is produced by the Tampa Bay Community Network, where you can get video production, training, and have your own show on these access channels. Today's topic is homelessness, and we are lucky, very lucky, to have four guests who bring a unique perspective to the table on this very urgent and difficult issue. Our first guest, Maria Barcus, the Chief Executive Officer of the Hillsborough Homeless Coalition. Housing has been Ms. Barcus' life's work where homelessness is concerned. Her education is in real estate and architecture. She has served as the Director of Economic Development for Dade County, played a major role in the recovery strategy after Hurricane Andrew. As Chief Executive Officer of Carrefour Supportive Housing in Miami, $70 million was raised to develop and operate 700 units of supportive housing for the homeless. Our next guest is Officer Dan McDonald, Tampa Police Department's first liaison officer to the homeless community. He sees himself as a problem solver. He's gotten to know hundreds of homeless folks, helping them as best he can with rides to get IDs so they can apply for jobs. He's also helped them get Social Security cards, given them rides to labor pools and jobs. He's gotten out-of-state relatives to send bus money, and he's helped people find affordable housing and veterans to find benefits. One man that Dan met ended up with his first pair of new glasses in 5 years. But as we shall see, not everyone on the street wants to accept Dan's help. Our third guest is Cindy Davis of Trinity Café. Feeding the homeless, a life's work for Cindy Davis. At Trinity, she's seen a small room at the Salvation Army morph into a new, larger, modern cafe that feeds hundreds every week. And finally, the Reverend Vicki Walker, Hyde Park Methodist Church. She's been in Tampa since 1999, now serves as the church's Minister of Missions and Outreach. That includes some of the most highly regarded Hands Up to the Homeless of Tampa Bay in the area, including a church breakfast that brings just hundreds into God's house. So to start out, I thought we'd ask each of you to give us your perspective of this issue from the seat you're in. So Maria, why don't you start for us?
Well, my function at the Homeless Coalition of Hillsborough County is to coordinate the community's response to homelessness. And the focus is on ending homelessness. So I was brought here with the idea that we would be undertaking a reorganization of the continuum of care, which is how we refer to all of the housing services, the funders, and the homeless themselves. And that over the coming year, we would develop a new strategic plan for the community. So that is what we're involved in now.
And Dan, how about your job? Very new job for Tampa.
Yeah, I've been doing the job just over a year, and the police department decided back then, about a year ago, that arresting the homeless over and over and over, sometimes over 100 times, is just not working. If someone has an alcohol problem or a drug problem, we decided we want to try and help them address those problems rather than just taking them to jail over and over. It solves nothing. So we've been doing that to try and that once they can deal with those issues, then hopefully we can get them off the street. That's their ultimate goal. Get jobs, get housing, make them a productive member of society rather than and taking from society. So that's basically what I've been doing or trying to do for the last year or so.
And Cindy Davis, I don't think that I've ever seen the things I've seen inside the Trinity Café. Tell us why that is, how unique it is. It's not just a place, it's not just a soup kitchen.
No, it is not a soup kitchen. It is a restaurant. It is a free restaurant for the homeless, the hungry, and the working poor. And we make it our goal to make sure that each person who walks in is treated with kindness, respect, that we help to restore dignity to their lives, and that we serve them as if they were in a restaurant. We serve in courses, we deliver the food to the tables, and we host the tables. We sit and talk with folks because that's the thing that's missing most, because one, they're on the street. People look the other way. They don't want to interact with them. So while they're with us, we have a lot of interaction and conversation, making them feel as if they're a guest in our own home.
And Vicki, I got here in 1982. And I remember one of the first places I ever saw anyone doing anything about homeless folks was inside your church. Tell us about the outreach and the ministry and what you're trying to do.
Wow, that's great. Our church, Hyde Park United Methodist, our mission statement is making God's love real. And the most important way that we live that out, we believe, is in relationships with people. And we believe that we can make a difference by the way we treat people, as Cindy said, with dignity and respect and compassion. And because of where our church is located, homeless folks were showing up on Sunday morning. And so initially, working their way over to the coffee pot, and then some well-meaning people would put a peanut butter and jelly sandwich out there for them to take sort of surreptitiously. And then we realized, let's be more intentional and inviting about our ministry with the folks that are coming. And so ultimately an open arms ministry began, and we serve over 200 people every Sunday morning. And we've expanded that to include we're a place where folks can receive their mail, because that's a challenge that people that don't have a home, don't have an address. So that's one element that we can add. We have clothing distribution the first Sunday of the month, haircuts the third Sunday of the month. And one of the best things about haircuts is that some of the Open Arms guests themselves are the barbers. And TJ always sets up a station. TJ's a former Marine who's hit into some hard times, but still likes to give back. He's enrolling in school, and he's always like, if you want me to give you a shave, he's really good at completely. So any bald people you see around Tampa, they've probably been by TJ's station. But
there was a piece of scripture that stuck in my mind when I was doing the research for the show. I think it's in Luke. You're going to have to fix me up here, make sure I'm right. But there was a time in Jesus' day, I think, when people were having a feast, or they're having a big meal, and they would open the doors and open the windows.
That's right.
And this was to invite the needy.
Right.
You can tell it much better than I.
No, go ahead. I mean, I love that you were inspired by this scripture, but the parable that I think you're referring to is that Jesus has invited all the who's who, and they didn't come. And so then he sent his disciples to go out to the highways and the byways and invite in everyone, that everyone is welcome at his table, and that everyone can feast, with what he has to offer. And so we really do believe that the people that we're in partnership with, that they're God's children just like we are. We all make mistakes. We all need second chances. And so we really have found through some of our other programs, some mentorship programs, that people really are changing their lives. The people that want to are really, they just need a little help. So it's inspiring to remember that the table is extended and that all are welcome.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Maria, you come from South Florida, where, everyone I've talked to said you did amazing things. And I know you had a little help, like a 1% sales tax on food and beverages, that I think it's fair to say, I know you're perceptive, it's not probably something this community's ready to, maybe the right thing to do, but I don't think they're ready to do it yet. What about that? I've heard you say that we need to look at what we have already, use it better.
Well, I think it's a two-step process. I have compared our response to homelessness with other communities, both in terms of the capacity of the system and in terms of the money that is going into that system. And we are not out of the norm for similarly sized communities in Florida, but there is a disconnect and a discrepancy with Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade gets a disproportionate amount of the federal funding for homelessness, in addition to the tax that they have, that they imposed on themselves. And all of that adds up over the 20 years that this has been going on. So I think we're not alone in this situation, but I do believe that ultimately it will take more resources. But first, we have to demonstrate in very real, specific terms that we are using what we already have effectively and in the best possible way. Because right now we have a lot of parts, but we don't have a coherent system. So we have to all look at what we're doing in light of becoming part of a system. And this is going to require change, and change is difficult, so it doesn't happen overnight, but that's the direction that we need to go in.
So we have a lot of folks, well-meaning folks, whether they
Right.
be church groups or private, that are trying to do good, but they're not
Right.
coordinated? Is that a way to put it?
That is a way to put it, and also over the past, even the past 10 years, there has been a lot of very good national research on what works the best and what is most effective. And most people are not in tune with that research, but the federal government is. So they are now expecting communities to listen to what the research is telling us and to change their programs accordingly. And they're pretty much requiring it of communities. So besides it being the right thing to do, the federal government through HUD is pushing us in that direction.
In a word, housing?
The whole focus is on quickly connecting people with permanent housing. And everything else is just a path to that end. So the idea is to keep people from becoming homeless in the first place, to minimize the time that they are homeless, and make sure that they end up in permanent sustainable housing, whatever that means for them.
I wonder, Dan, do you have any examples of folks that you've worked with who obtained housing and you observed the change in their situation?
Yeah, the model is called Housing First, which basically seems to work the best, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. And basically the idea is once you get housing, many of your other problems will either go away or will get minimized. Things like Reverend Vicki was talking about, like getting mail or getting a haircut, we pretty much all take them for granted. But if you have a house, well, now you have a place to get your mail. You can have a phone. Life becomes a lot easier. And I've seen remarkable transformations in people over a short period of time. A case in point, one gentleman I caught urinating on a tree downtown in a park. He went from kind of the falling down alcoholic in a couple of months to he was the one calling me for when people were falling down. And we ended up getting him back to Nevada on the bus to reunite with his family. And I don't know where he is now, but he cleaned up his act pretty well. And there's plenty of other people I've seen. Well, not a lot. I wish I could say it was in the thousands, but it's maybe tens or a few dozen. That once they get a place to live, it's a lot easier to get a job. Life becomes a lot better for them, and definitely housing is the way to go. There's not enough of it. There's not enough funding. I think we could all use more money and more funding, and but I think we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Cindy, can you give us some insight into those folks that Dan's talking about? You deal with them on a daily basis, and the ones that just need that little something. Maybe you have some to share in that regard as important. I mean, a good meal is very important, but a roof over your head is pretty fundamental.
It is very fundamental and very important, and I don't believe that any of our guests want to be homeless. The thing that I hear from them all the time is, if I could just get a job, if I could just get enough money to get a roof over my head, I don't want to live out in the street. I don't want to worry about where I'm going to sleep every night, how I'm going to go to the bathroom, how I'm going to get a meal and drink water, and all of those things that they have to do day in and day out. I mean, that's every single day you're worrying about that kind of thing. They don't want to be on the street. They really don't. But they're very grateful to have a place to come to get a meal. And they thank us for that all the time. but they also thank us for treating them as humans, interacting with them, and trying to hook them up with resources that can help them, because that's what we do. I mean, we don't do anything beyond the food, but we do collaborate with other agencies. We try and get people to the right place if they wish to be helped.
And Vicki, there's probably a lot of other congregations in the community that are searching for a mission, that are searching for purpose. I mean, as I understand it, kind of a rough time in the church business to get people, you know, to sustain their faith. And I wonder about that. I wonder if this, in your view, isn't a good avenue for folks to go, what you guys have done.
Absolutely. And one of the most important things that I would advise any faith community that's interested is the very element that Maria mentioned a moment ago, which is we don't want a lot of disparate groups just doing their own thing out there. It's really important to talk to your community partners and know where the gaps are, know what's really needed. For instance, I knew that Cindy provided a meal every day, but not on Sunday. So that's why Sunday became a natural time for us to offer a meal. But you know, I also don't try to solve everything at my place. There's a few things that we can do really well, and then there are community partners that we, as you mentioned, refer people to that can pick up the other pieces. And so I would encourage any group to talk to who's doing something in their neighborhood, what the real needs are. We also found a need to help single moms who had kids, and so developed a program called Homes, Housing, Offering Mentoring, Education, and Support. We did that in partnership with Metropolitan Ministries in 2005, and that has now become the model that they use to write their children's board grant, and they got $1.5 million for this program called First Hug, that is to help congregations mentor and rally around families that first have housing. So just what everybody's saying, that they need to stabilize the family first, but then build in some support systems to help them. And I think the most important thing a church can do, it's not about stuff. And if you start out thinking it's about money and bus passes and the stuff, you're missing it. I think it's about relationships, and it's about teaching people how to solve their own problems. And so helping people develop some skills that maybe they don't have. And it's a friend of mine said it's like her 5-year-old. It takes a long time every morning when you're getting dressed to watch that kid tie his shoe. It's painful, it's slow, she could do it quicker. But she said when he's 20, she doesn't want to be tying his shoes. So we try to teach people how to do it themselves.
Maria, isn't a part of this finding out, and I know numbers are numbers, but so much of this in terms of the help we get is based on numbers. The grants from the federal government, what little the state may give us. And we're having a problem counting, aren't we? And you inherited this, I'll give you credit. But for example, just some of the numbers. In 2013, we counted 2275. We had to count twice because it was close to Gasparilla. There were a lot of problems with the count.
Right.
But 2011, 4,681, so there's about a 50% gap there between 2013, 2011. Number of children reported homeless by the schools down 20% from 2 years ago. Yet you have organizations like Metropolitan Ministries, as well as I know I've seen Cindy Davis quoted. They're not seeing, nor is Vicki, they're not seeing the numbers going down. And I doubt Officer Dan is. So give us some insight into this numbers game. And I know we all hate it, but it's awfully important, I guess, to those who hold the purse strings, right?
It's of some comfort that the numbers are not relied upon that much. It's a factor, but it's not the end-all and be-all. There's a recognition that the point-in-time count, which is what we do, that is just a snapshot on a given day. But it doesn't tell you how many people there are in the course of a year, and we know that we're never going to find everyone, particularly in a community like ours, where we have a warm climate and we have a big rural area. So people are not in shelters in January because it's cold. No, we have to go out and find them wherever they are. So we know that we're not counting them all. So it's just an indication. This year, it's reassuring that other communities have also had declines. And I think that's due to the improved economy and the fact that the federal government deployed new programs 2 years ago in the midst of the recession. That definitely had an impact. So I think we have made progress and there has been improvement, but we can't tell how much is real improvement and how much is undercounting because of the circumstances surrounding this year's vote. But what I can tell you is that in the future we're going to do the count every year. And we're making a series of changes that will improve the quality of our numbers. And just by having them at every year, it'll give us more insight into what they mean. So that part of it's encouraging, but we don't base everything on the numbers. The numbers mainly important to us for planning purposes, in that we want to have an idea of, okay, we had 200 of this category. Then we do a series of things to multiply that number to know how many interventions we need for that population. So that's where it's really important.
And you can also measure by that count some things that are working and some things that aren't working. For example, I also noted that the number of homeless folks in jail at the time of the count was down 35%, from 567 on the day they counted in 2011 to 366. And it would seem like the sheriff's office and the police department and the courts administration, I would think, need some credit for that, because obviously we're not criminalizing homelessness to the degree we did.
Right, and that's a real number. You know, those are actual people being counted. It's not an estimate, and we know that's all there was that night. So that's a very real, concrete number.
Dan, can you give us some insight into how things have changed in that regard? I mean, we haven't changed all the laws, but we've changed our approach, I think. Huh?
Yeah, one thing we're doing is alternative sentencing. For example, in the past, going back to the old style, where we catch someone drinking beer outside a convenience, so we arrest them and take them to jail, and they sit in jail, and they get time served or go to trial. That's very expensive. It's, I think, $75 or $100 a day to have someone in jail for a very minor violation. And one of our, as in law enforcement's best allies, has been the Public Defender's Office, specifically Marie Marino. We're kind of, with the police, the public defenders. Traditional is kind of an adversarial relationship in court, but they've been one of our best allies. And what we're doing now, if we catch someone on an alcohol-related violation, if they plead guilty, they'll be sent to the Amethyst Center, which is a detox facility, and they'll spend 10 days there, and then they'll have 30 days unsupervised probation. And that is, one, it's reducing the jail population. It's for the quote-unquote real criminals that should be there. It's kind of pushing towards someone with substance abuse problems to get help. Not everyone's ready for help, but at least they're given the opportunity. And it's also cheaper. They have plenty of beds available most of the time, and it's a bed at the Amethyst Center is a lot cheaper than a bed space in jail. So it seems to be working fairly well. I don't have any numbers, unfortunately, on the recidivism rate, but kind of anecdotally, it seems to be working pretty well so far.
Well, by those numbers, certainly. Another thing that's interesting, and I'm curious, Cindy and Vicki, about this, while we've got a smaller homeless count, we're finding, though, that the people living on the edge of homelessness remains alarmingly high. The numbers that the coalition had this time out, 10,419 in 2011, up to 12,843. That's a pretty good increase. Are you seeing more of that, folks that have a home but are living with someone else?
I most definitely am. That's the biggest change I've seen since I've been at Trinity Café. When I started there in 2009, we had a lot more chronically homeless folks eating with us every day than we do now. We have a lot of what we refer to as the working poor, and they have, you know, part-time jobs or very low-paying jobs, and they sometimes have a roof over their head, or they live doubled up with someone, friends and relatives. but they don't have enough to make ends meet. And so one of the ways they do that is by coming and having lunch with us. And talking about reductions, I have also noticed in the cafe itself, we used to have a lot of veterans, and I've seen fewer veterans most recently than I did when I first started there as well. And I believe that they are working really hard to get their programs and get them off the street as well with housing, and I think it's working.
And the federal government's definitely turned up the heat on
Yes.
homelessness. Vicki, how about you? Do you see this kind of pattern where it seems there are more people couch surfing and living with families? So
Absolutely. We have some people who come in a car that's what they also live in, and they park in the parking lot and come in. And many of our guests are working. So as Cindy said, it's not that they're not working; they're low income. They don't have health benefits, a lot of them, and so those challenges. And we are getting some families, some people with children who are coming. So
increasingly, it seems that the economic impact of the times are playing a hand in
Yes.
that to a large degree. Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back.
I'll fall from your grace, but I'll never let go of your hand. I'll never let go.
1 in 8 Americans is struggling with hunger. Who's the 1 in 8 in your life? You can help today. Visit feedingamerica.org/1in8 to find your local food bank.
Change your life. Learn TV and internet video production skills at TBCN in Tampa. Become a skilled video producer quickly and inexpensively. Learn audio, editing, lighting, and camera basics. Produce multi-camera videos for TV, the internet, business, or pleasure.
Welcome to my live call-in show on Tampa Bay Community Network. You too can learn to produce and star in your own video programming, or you can have TBCN staff do it for you.
Call TBCN at 813-977-5200 today and change your life. Visit our website at tbcn.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
And welcome back. I'm Warren Elly for Speak Up Presents. We're talking about homelessness. Our guest, Maria Barcus, the new executive director of the Hillsborough Homeless Coalition, Officer Dan McDonald, the city's first homeless liaison officer, Cindy Davis, who has for years and years served meals with dignity at the Trinity Café, and Vicki Walker, who has single-handedly, I think it's fair to say, taken the church community of Tampa Bay and set the high mark for treating homeless people to great meals and assistance and help. Now, coming up very soon is the matter of a crackdown on the streets of Tampa. This has been looming for some time as the homeless population, say police, has become more aggressive, more concentrated at city parks, near ATMs and restaurants, and the mayor and his police department have proposed setting up what in effect are exclusion zones downtown, anywhere around these ATMs, also Ybor City, quite an extensive area to crack down to ban sleeping in those parks, also to ban panhandling in those areas. And of course, there is a big disparity in the abilities of government to provide shelter, which in turn allows legally them to arrest people for sleeping in the park. If you don't have a bed in a shelter, the way the courts have ruled, you cannot take people into custody. In Hillsborough County, on a given night, I know of 23 beds in the newly opened Cypress Landing for the chronically homeless. There's a Salvation Army shelter. But after that, for homeless men, it's pretty short. Metropolitan Ministries doesn't accept them, except families, children. and mothers and children. So that's a pretty big hurdle for the local government. And this is a very broad subject, so we're going to go a little bit at a time here. But what, Maria Barcus, do you think of this matter of setting up these exclusion zones and I guess, I don't want to say go to war, but certainly get more aggressive with panhandling?
Well, from our perspective, and as I told the city council, you know, we would like to be able to house all those people, and that is our focus. And many of them are chronically homeless, people who've been homeless for a year or more who have a disability. And we are in a focused effort to get those folks housed permanently. So I think that effort dovetails with the city's overall objective. Now, in the meantime, it is up to our elected leaders to create that balance between quality of life for the general population and the homeless population. With respect to having a place that the homeless can go when this crackdown goes into effect, my personal vision of what I would like to see is several bridge housing situations that are intake, assessment, and placement centers where people are just there temporarily until you can house them. And in the meantime, they're being assessed, they're getting their identification straightened out, they're getting their benefits straightened out, they're getting connected with other community resources, they're helped to find a job if they're able to, but they're already in a stable place and en route to being housed. And I would like to see small facilities like that, no more than 50 people in different parts of the community so that it's not a burden to any one neighborhood. And it's only a stepping stone to permanent housing. It's not a place where people will stay a long time.
So it's not the safe harbor concept, it's the idea, but not as large. Safe harbor in Pinellas County has about 300 beds, I believe.
Right, and it's a particular kind of shelter. But no, this would be, right now, there are a lot of homeless people being housed in hotels and motels. And so this is a more organized way of going about that. And it would provide, you know, the city with an option for those folks that, you know, are in the park to say, look, we do have a place for you. Come into one of these intake and assessment centers, and we'll find a housing solution for you. So that's what I would like to see implemented.
And it's going to cost money.
It is going to cost money, and like everything else. But I think you have to realize that we are, as a community, we are not putting a lot of money into this issue compared to other communities. And if we handle it right, it's a budget item that can decline over time because the people become more self-sufficient. And once we house the chronically homeless, you don't become chronic overnight. So at some point, we turn that corner to where the number of homeless people are declining, and it takes fewer and fewer resources to handle the population that's left. So that's what we want to get to.
But in the meantime, will we have time to get these in place before this, I hate to use the word crackdown, but it's what it feels like, begins?
Well, that's true, and that's something that I think the city will have to address. It's not something that the coalition can address.
Can you help us understand the relationship between the county government and the city government vis-a-vis social services, these kinds of things we're talking about?
Well, the county does handle the bulk of the social services for the entire county, including the cities. But the city also receives federal funds and has a housing department and has an emergency solutions grant. So the city doesn't have the extent of responsibility or the extent of resources that the county has, but it does have some. And that piece of it needs to be coordinated with everything else.
Have you gotten the sense that perhaps the city's been pushing back to the county instead of realizing that it has some resources too?
Well, I think there are a lot of people with the city that understand that the city has resources to bring to the table and that it has a responsibility in this respect too. And that, you know, ultimately that will need to happen.
Let's flip the coin over and hear from Dan what those city council people that are going to be debating this, what they're going to be hearing about what's going on the street that's the motivation for this. Give us some sense of some of the things that have changed in the last 6 months or so that have caused this to be debated.
Well, I think going back over time, over the last several years, downtown particularly has really developed. New housing, new residential opportunities, new recreational opportunities at night. More and more people moving downtown. And with that comes a lot of complaints about crime in general, but homeless complaints, whether you send it to the mayor's office or the chief of police office. I get those complaints and I deal with them all. And there's more and more of them from particularly downtown residents. And I go to some downtown neighbor association meetings periodically, and that's one of their hot buttons right now is the homeless, particularly downtown, Tampa Heights, for the most part, but mostly downtown. So we have to balance the needs of the homeless, but we also have to balance the needs of people who are investing in the city, buying, renting houses here, working down here. And so it's a balancing act, and it's difficult. In terms of some of the new rules that we're looking at, basically one of our goals is very simple, or our request is very simple. If you're homeless, we don't want you to camp, not necessarily sleep if you're taking a doze in the middle of the day, but if you're camping, as in have a bedroll down, piece of cardboard, all your property. If your intent is to camp in a public space, such as a park, on the roadway, or on the sidewalk, we don't want you to do that. And that's what is largely driving many of our complaints. Some of our parks have become, like next to Bush Ross, of Bocadis Park, there's a lot of homeless folks who go there every day and are kind of taking over the park. But we have to balance the needs of them plus the needs of the citizens who use that park. So in terms of how the laws work or would work, if the passed, that's up to the city council to do the legislative stuff. Then if we encounter someone that's sleeping in public, basically this is leverage to try and get them into making a change in life. That's what it's all about. We're not trying to criminalize homelessness. We're not trying to be inhumane towards them. We just want them to make a change in life. And that's the biggest problem I'm facing right now with the chronic homeless. I think no one woke up in the morning and decided sleeping in a park on a piece of cardboard is a good option. But at some point in their lives, they accepted that, and it's become an acceptable option. And we kind of want to push them towards making a change. Most nights, except for the coldest nights of the year, the emergency shelters, such as the Salvation Army, right now is running about a third empty. They call me literally begging me to bring people there. They have about 35 to 40 beds a night. So we want people to go there if they choose to, get help, get services. And the absolute last resort is going to jail. But here's the kicker, unlike every other law, they're the ones that choose if they go to jail. Not me, it's their choice completely. You can pick one of the several other options I'm going to give you, and if you just won't comply, then the last choice is to go to jail. So it's completely upon them, and that's the way the law works, which is Joel versus Orlando, which is a legal decision. So that's basically the gist of the laws that we're looking at. And you know, we want to be humane. I think I treat people with dignity and respect. I think most of my colleagues do, but that's kind of what we've been looking at for the last few months or so.
And it's also interesting when you look at the laws in our area. Sarasota, you can't sleep. You cannot sleep in Sarasota. Take the nap, no. You can't sleep in Sarasota. In Orlando, you can't feed in a public park. Can't feed in a public park. In St. Petersburg, no sleeping or reclining on public sidewalks. No panhandling zone in St. Petersburg, the waterfront, and downtown. Clearwater, no sitting on the sidewalk or sleeping outdoors. $500 fine, 60 days in jail. So it seems to me, my sense is, we're not going there. I don't think that we're anxious to be that punitive, but something's got to be done, Cindy. What do you think?
Well, I wish what Maria said would take place quickly, because that's what needs to be done. We need to have a place for these folks to go. Like I said before, I don't think the majority of the people want to be in the situation that they're in, and I think that if we had a place for them to go that they could go to and everything was housed in one place where they could get help. I mean, one of the things that I hear all the time is, in order to get an ID, I have to have a bus pass to get here, to get there. You know, it's not all in one place. So if we had those services in one place, that would be very helpful to people. So I do wish that that would be what occurs. I don't think it's going to happen quickly. I think there will be a lot of opposition because it takes money, and people are not willing to agree to do that. It's going to be expensive, but it is what needs to be done.
Even if people don't recognize that quarter of a cent or a half a cent on the sales tax is going to prevent a lot of other things that are going to cost us money. As Dan talked about how much the jails cost tonight. Think about the emergency rooms, which is, of course, the medical care of first and last resort. And folks, we're all paying for that, for that
Yes,
stuff.
we are.
Vicki, something that strikes me is that there's folks, you know, the chronically homeless who just aren't going to change. And there's the folks that don't want to be there but for whatever. But then there's some middle ground, some folks who need a reason, perhaps, some, you know, to pull themselves up. Am I going somewhere good there?
You are going somewhere good there. And I have countless stories. I can name people and tell you that they just, you know, they hit a rough patch. They were discouraged. They weren't getting interviews, and they wound up in a bad place. One of the people that I've helped most recently is Lewis, who had a master's in electrical engineering and had worked for a company in Chicago for 25 years. Wow. This guy's no slacker. He could be any one of us or any family or friend. And he, the company was downsizing. He was an older guy making a lot of money. They also didn't want to pay the pension, and that got all tied up in a lawsuit. And he found himself seeking help from a friend in Florida, and ultimately, thankfully, he has found other employment. He's back up in Chicago. He emails me every week. Thanks that you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thanks for helping me hang in there. He's back in his field. He's making tons of money. He's doing great. And when he first went back to Chicago, I was like, oh my goodness, the weather. Are you in a safe place? He said, absolutely. You know, I have the money. I'm in a home now. I'm back on my feet. But thanks for helping me when I couldn't see there could be a tomorrow.
Well, how did you help? Tell us a little more about it.
Well, and trust me, everybody in the room on Sunday morning, those 200 people don't all have master's degrees. But some people have small problems that we can help with. A different person would be Rose, who came to this country from Haiti in a violent situation and had some citizenship challenges. And so we helped Rose get her immigration papers, get her status cleared up. We helped her stay in a safe place. We helped her finish school. She became a nurse. She's now a nurse at St. Joe's and has continued her education. And When an earthquake hit Haiti and Haitian people were brought to this country, Rose was a primary translator to help those people and bring comfort to those people and reassure those folks that she had been in a displaced situation herself, and she has recovered, and now she's a homeowner. She's bought a house in Brandon. She's married. I performed her wedding 5 years ago. She's doing great. But at a time when she thought she'd lost everything, she just needed, you know, I had a lawyer, I had a this, I had a that. So really, to anybody that wants to be involved, what are your skills? What skill set? Who do you have around you that can help? And how can you help a person? Because it's easy. You just got to care.
I think you have to understand that part of the homeless condition is isolation and hopelessness.
Yes.
And a loss of identity and a loss of self-worth. So, you know, like you start talking about getting a job, and you know, the homeless person is going to say, look at me, nobody's going to give me a job.
Right.
So they don't even, you know, they don't have enough hope that there is a job out there for them to take the initiative to try. And a psychiatrist explained it to me one time that when people first become homeless, they're very anxious to do everything they can to stop being homeless. But after a while, their coping mechanisms kick in, and they begin to find virtue in their situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they build up the fact that, you know, they have this freedom, and they have this, and they have that. So it's all we all do that.
Right.
Sure we do.
But they do it too. So they're, you know, when we start talking that they don't want help, well, you know, they may not believe that there is real help out there, and they may have had a bad incident in a shelter. And so you talk to them about a shelter and they don't want to go there. But you talk to them about an apartment or a hotel room where they're going to be alone, and then you're talking a different game. So, you know, and Officer McDonald does a lot of this, just talking with people, because they don't believe that there's anything out there for them.
Dan, what does the uniform do? How does it change things?
It's kind of interesting because I do very little police work anymore. I can probably count on one hand the number of arrests I've made in the last year. Between that and the police car, so it's kind of a oxymoron, I guess. I guess it opens doors and gets me in places, and people see the uniform and take me seriously, or maybe semi-seriously. Like, for example, I can go in some places to get with someone with services, and many times, depending where I go, they'll let me cut to the front of the line, which may not seem fair, but when you go into service provided 2 or 3 times a week, it saves a lot of time, and I can see a lot more. I can bring a lot more people doing that. So they don't have to, but they generally take care of me, and people are willing to listen, and it's kind of still a novelty. People are not used to seeing a cop standing in line at the DMV with someone to get their ID. So it creates a lot of attention. So I think kind of opens a lot of doors where maybe beforehand it will kind of shut or hard to get through. Or if I call someone, I can usually get an answer to my question pretty quick. So I guess it basically facilitates my job.
And it also, doesn't it, shatter some misconceptions, misperceptions among the homeless? That
Yeah.
There's only one thing you're going to do, and that's take them to jail, right?
Yeah, for about the first 3 weeks when I started doing this last year, the homeless, I don't think they knew what to think. They were just like, and one guy actually had to talk him into my car, because I was going to, actually someone bought some Christmas presents for him, and had to talk. He thought I was going to take him to jail, and I had to convince him that I wasn't. But after about 3 weeks, actually one guy, Don, says, "You've passed the test." And, what do you mean? It's like, well, now we realize you're serious. We weren't quite sure what to think at first, and the homeless are. It's kind of a big, small town in the homeless community.
Sure.
Everyone knows everyone else for the most part, and so word spread. And because the only thing I have is I'm not dealing with a tangible product or a commodity, or I don't have any budget. The only thing I have is my word, The only thing I can do is, that's the only thing I'll promise. I will try. I won't promise anything other than that. So I think it's opened up a lot of doors, but for the good, for the better, I think.
What about, Cindy, the faith of the folks who aren't homeless? Convincing them that we need to do this. We need to listen to Maria and the program she wants to bring forth.
Before I answer that, I want to say something about Dan
Please
on
do.
that subject, because I spend some of my time with people who haven't had an encounter with him yet. And a lot of times if I don't have a way to refer them to a resource that I know can help them, then Dan's my go-to guy, because maybe he has something instead. And I have his business card on my resource table, so often I'm picking up his card and I'm talking to someone and I say, look, this is who you need to call. And they look at the card and they say, oh, I don't know about that. You know, I got arrested one time, and I said, so I have to vouch for him. But I tell him, listen, Dan is a good guy. If there's something he can do to help you and you honestly want help, he's your man. So I do have to do a little bit of convincing, but after that conversation, they'll take his card and hopefully they're hooking up with you, and I think they are. As far as the faith of people and
finding a solution.
And finding a solution.
Contributing.
There are people that do want solutions, and they want someone to believe in them. I have a homeless guy that's volunteering with me right now. He ate with me for 2 days when we first opened at our new location, and he approached me and he said, I don't like to just take, I'd like to give back as well. He said, can you use me as a volunteer? And I said, absolutely. So he has been there every single day, and he's a great volunteer. He's there early, he stays late, and he does everything, anything that's asked of him. He's in a tough situation. He's only been homeless since April, and he's a musician, and he lost all of his equipment. And he has a way of making some money if he can get some equipment. So I've just kind of put the word out to people, and little by little, some things are starting to come in. I got a microphone for him, you know, this and that. But you should see what has happened to him, and just seeing that people believe in him, they want to do something for him, and they're working together, having faith in him. Therefore, he's having faith that he's going to soon be out of the situation that he's in. He says, all I want to do is make enough to get off the street. I hate every night having to worry about where I'm going to sleep, how I'm going to keep from being arrested for being in the wrong spot. I don't want to live this way. So that's some of the things that we see and do.
And Vicki, the other side of that equation being the folks who have, the parishioners, the congregants, the folks, the citizens.
Right.
Whether it be supporting your program at your church, or calling up their county commissioner or their city councilman and saying, I support the Homeless Coalition's program here, we need to support it. How do you do that? Did you have resistance in your church at all? Or were folks kind of going, whoa, do we really want to mix with those people?
I'm sure that we have elements of that in any congregation. We have 2,000 members of our church, so I'm confident that we are not all of one mind on any topic. So this would not be an exception. However, I think that we have come to recognize that this is a community problem. It requires a community solution. And so it's not enough just to make a law and say you can't be in the park until you come up with an alternative place where people can be. I don't think that we're solving anything. We're just moving it over, but we didn't take care of these people, which I think is part of our calling, and recognizing that we're all one. I'm affected by how these people are affected. How they're treated is how I'm treated, is what I sincerely believe. And so, you know, I think it's going to take business leaders and community leaders who want a different kind of downtown. That's great that we have economic development downtown. I want that. I want our city to prosper. But I also want to care for all of our citizens, including the least. So.
Outstanding. Let's go around as we close, and each of you kind of wrap up. Talk a bit about what you'd like people to do for the coalition, for the police department, for the Trinity, for for the church or whatever you choose. Just have at it.
Well, we're going to be asking of the community, of everyone involved, to change in the coming year. So I'm hoping that people will remain open-minded and will focus on the fact that we have to work together to get our arms around this issue and really create a permanent solution and to be able to end homelessness in our community in our lifetimes.
And Dan.
It's a tough situation, and we're all working towards the same goal, and there are a lot of very talented people working on this issue, particularly those at our table right now. So I think we're moving in the right direction. There's always room for improvement, always room for more money. And for those who are not familiar with the issues, educate yourself, talk to any one of us, and find out what the problems are. Because it's been a very eye-opening experience for me, so learn what the problems are.
Great, Dan. We have 2 minutes left, 1 minute for Cindy, 1 minute for Vicki.
It would be a great day when homelessness is not an issue, but until that day comes, I do want people to continue to support everyone who is working to help folks who are in a tough situation and to understand that this can happen to anyone.
We'd urge everybody to go to Trinity and serve. It's unbelievable. Vicki.
Well, and my invitation is get to know somebody that's homeless. Don't be afraid when you walk down the street. Listen to somebody's story. You don't have to do anything more than listen, but perhaps in the listening, you'll begin to realize that they're not that different than you are, and that you really might have within you a solution that no one's thought of, and we need you. So call me if you've got the answer. We want you.
At the Hyde Park United Methodist Church. All I can say is this has been a wonderful hour. These 4 people represent the best of everything in our community. And I'm Warren Elly. Thanks for watching Speak Up Presents. See you next time.
I'll fall from your grace, but I'll never let go of your hand. I'll never let go.
1 in 8 Americans is struggling with hunger. Who's the 1 in 8 in your life? You can help today. Visit feedingamerica.org/1in8 to find your local food bank.